this is legal. 2, keep every single piece of evidence that you have in that device.
Hey people, how you are doing today? It's your girl Destiny here, and welcome back to my channel. How you are doing? Hope you guys are doing great. So this video is the part 2 video of the video I posted previously of the black man who came up to share a story of his longtime partner that cheated on him. And at a point of time, this partner became transgender. And even though now, him telling the story, she has transitioned back to she. So his partner was originally born a female who transitioned to a male. And now she has transitioned back to a female. Just go check out the first part 1 because the part 1 gives a lot of background on what the story is and their foundation, the dynamic of this relationship, and where the relationship is heading and where it's going. This part 2, I'm listening to it just like you guys. I've not heard the story because I want to really listen to the story with you guys and get the raw reaction directly with you guys. So anyway guys, go check out the part 1. I'll leave it down in the description box and also up in the card so that you can catch up with the story. You need to know the background story because it is very, very important with some of the things I know he's going to say, which he said he was going to say later on in the video. But let's go check out this video and then we'll come back and talk more.
Who do I have kids with? Part 5. Trigger warning, this story contains of the adult and child kind, domestic situations, persons, trans-sensitive topics, and cheating. Before we get started again, I just want to take a minute to thank Risa Tisa for having the courage to share her story and inspiring me to share mine. Without your strength, none of this would have been possible. We're going to pick back up in the story about June of 2019 when I started to tell you a little bit about Stephanie. If you don't remember, Stephanie was the ex of my baby daddy, James. Stephanie and I at this point have developed a very good friendship, so much so that me, her, and James are in a 3-way group chat. Remember that. October 2019 rolls around and the money from social media is rolling in, so I bought James a car. At this time in my life, even though we were broken up, they were still very much my best friend, and I wanted to take care of them because my idea of family didn't revolve around us being together. During that time, James was trying to get back with me, and I could not trust them, so I told them that we could be friends with benefits instead. Remember that 3-way group chat between James, Stephanie, and me? From the minute we were in the group chat, the nature of the conversations were always like jokingly flirty. Over the next several months, those 3-way flirts became less jokey. Then it became less group chat and more me and Stephanie talking. It was December 2019, and by this time I had developed really deep feelings for Stephanie. We were still talking to group chat, but me and Stephanie started talking off on our own. Fast forward to March 2020. James comes downstairs with my iPad screaming. He saw the text messages between me and Stephanie, and he saw the feelings that were starting to develop. He FaceTimed her right there and questioned her about what was going on between us. She admitted that she had feelings for me. I was dealing with so much guilt for falling for the homie's girl that I said that I didn't feel the same. I came forward to James a few days later with my true feelings about Stephanie. He gave me an ultimatum. He told me that I had to choose between pursuing a relationship with Stephanie or having him and the kids in my life. I genuinely feared that if I pursued anything with Stephanie, that I would lose my kids. Me and James had a trauma bond so deep that I wasn't able to see at the time how wrong that was. I did not want to lose my kids, so I ultimately decided to stop talking to Stephanie. I take full accountability and responsibility for my actions, and how I handled it was not the best. I just ended up ghosting her without an explanation as to why I was leaving her life. But I want to make this point that it is never okay in any relationship for anyone to ever give you an ultimatum or threaten to leave you. That is a sign of abuse. Moving forward, in 2020, I started making a lot of money. We started going on trips. My success in social media had led us to a point where we were afforded opportunities to be in movies. I bought them a car. We stayed in fancy Airbnbs. Every single opportunity that I had, I brought James along with me. They had full access to my money. That is a very important part to note. In May of 2020, I got a girlfriend. Let's call her Taylor. Very early on, my relationship with Taylor put a strain on my relationship with my baby daddy, James. They did not like each other. Taylor didn't like James because she saw him for who he truly was, and James didn't like Taylor because she took attention away from him. In 3 weeks of me starting my relationship, James got into a relationship with another girl. Let's call her Gwen. She's very important to this portion of the story. Couple weeks into their relationship, James comes up to me and asks if he can move Gwen into the house. At this point, I was not aware of the absurdity of the situation. Baby daddy asking me if he can move his girlfriend of 2 weeks into the house that we both share together while raising 2 children together. Sounds crazy when you say it out loud. Keep up. I said yes because ever since me and Taylor started dating, Gwen was the only thing that made James happy. I genuinely just wanted to see my best friend happy. That was it. On June/July of 2020, Gwen moves into the house. Fast forward to August of 2020, my social media success has propelled us to a point where I've saved up enough money to be able to afford to pay for James's top surgery. It had been something he had been looking for his whole life, and he actually broke down in tears when I made the video about it. It was one of the greatest moments of my life, seeing how happy they were to have this lifetime achievement and the weight of these two things that they were carrying that they did not identify with. I saw how much of an important milestone it was for them, which made it all more confusing when they detransitioned. We'll talk more about that later. September/October 2020 rolls around, and here's where the story gets a little messy. I got into a really bad fight with Taylor one night, and she was contemplating if she wanted to stay in the relationship or leave. James was very much still in a relationship. I was downstairs to my room one night, and I started to open up to him about some of the problems that was going on in my relationship. He started telling me about the problems that he was experiencing with Gwen, and for the first time in my life, I cheated. Me and James had been in a 10-year relationship, and not once had I ever cheated. It was one of the lowest points in my life, and I remember being incredibly disgusted with myself, not only for the hurt that I caused, but because I always prided myself on being a loyal person. I take full responsibility for my actions. But what was a low moment for me was just another example of James using me when he wanted me for his purposes, and then just discarding me when I didn't have that use. 2 weeks later, he breaks up with Gwen and drives her back to the state that she lived in. Fast forward to October 2020. James is single. I'm in a relationship with Taylor, when we find out that Taylor has to have brain surgery. On November 2020, Taylor gets scheduled for brain surgery. At this time, me and Taylor had only been dating for a total of about 6 months, but we were very serious. Sometime after her surgery, we got into a big blow-up fight that resulted in me getting hung up on. I started venting to James about some of the things that she told me that troubled me, and he took every single one of those words and twisted them. At the end of our talk, James had me feeling like Taylor didn't even care about me. Later that night, we slept together. Before you go start judging me, I was in a toxic relationship with a lifelong best friend. I take full accountability for the actions that I caused, for the hurt that I caused. But yet again, this is another example of James coming to me at a low moment and using that to his advantage. Next, several months go by, and James starts deteriorating. Ever since that last time we hooked up, I stopped giving him the attention that he wanted from me. I was dealing with so much guilt that it completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. We just didn't interact much anymore, just two strangers living in the same house. This whole time, we were still making content together. Y'all just didn't know this was happening behind the scenes. May 2021 was the start of the year that changed the course of our lives. Me and Taylor at this time are still in a relationship. She lived a couple cities away. I still lived in the same house with James. James's father, Tom, a man who very much helped to raise me, passed, and James was dealing with the depression from that. Something I want you to remember about Tom's passing. When he died, his pension was supposed to pay for his cremation. It was $2,000. Pension said it would be up to a year before the funds would be dispersed to pay for the cremation. And I had the money at the time, so I just said I'll pay for it and then pay me back when the money comes in from the pension. Remember that. About mid-June 2021, James meets this guy on a dating app. Let's call him Ryan. And it's a very important part of the story. I need you to remember his name. James is telling me all about Ryan and about this date that they're about to go on. And this is genuinely the first time that I've seen him happy in months. Date went well. I was hyped that the bestie had a date. 2 weeks later, James tells me Ryan, his boyfriend, is a registered offender of children. Keep in mind that James is a victim of childhood SA, and their neighbor was one of the most notorious in the state of Ohio. I asked James, how did you find this out? And they said that my mom looked him up. Found out later that James only told me because his mom was going to if he didn't. In that moment, me and James sat down and had an in-depth conversation about what he wanted to do, because it seemed like he wanted to continue to pursue the relationship with Ryan. I tried to give the benefit of the doubt because I had never seen James that happy. And Ryan, on the outside, on the surface, he looked like a squeaky clean guy. He had money. He came from a well-off family. I told James, if you're considering pursuing a relationship with this man, I need you, for the safety of the children, to ask him questions about the case, about what the trial was, about everything that went on, because that is a heavy, heavy charge. A couple days go by, and James has been spending the night at Ryan's house, and he has not been answering his phone. He finally gets in contact with me, and I ask him, did you ask questions to Ryan? Did you find out the details about the case? James tells me Ryan said it wasn't that big of a deal. It was overblown. It was a 14-year-old girl, and she was leading Ryan on. Ryan was a 27-year-old male the time this crime happened. Then asked her if she read the court docket, because the court docket said that he was a youth pastor who drove to another state, met this girl, and the police set up a sting, Chris Hansen style, to catch this man. Upon telling him this, James got mad at me for reading the court docket. I was over here concerned about the safety of the children, and they were concerned about me splitting up their relationship. James told me that he needed some time to think about what he wanted to do. I was like, take the time you need, because I thought that the obvious decision would make sense. A victim of being with it doesn't make sense. It was less than a week later when James called me and told me that he is moving in with Ryan, that he's taking the kids with him part-time. I said, no, the hell you're not. What I didn't know was that in the state of Ohio, there's something called super custody. Basically, if two parents are unmarried, custody goes to the birth giver and the father has no say. I was afraid that my children were going to sleep under the same roof as I have kids with. Part 6. Trigger warning, this story includes of the child and adult kind. DV situations, childhood trauma issues such as abandonment and neglect. We're at the point in the story now where James, my baby daddy, has told me that he's going to be moving in with his boyfriend that he's known for 1 month, who we just found out is of children. Give you a little bit of the dynamic of our house. Even though we weren't together, me and James still operated very much as a couple. When it came to financial matters, I made the money and they spent the money when it came to the bills. I actually found that act, for whatever reason, to be too stressful. So I would make it, they would spend it. Remember, that is very important for this portion of the story. It was July of 2021, and I was financially overwhelmed because I was footing the bill financially for 2 households. My girlfriend at the time, Taylor, was still recovering from brain surgery, and so she didn't have a job. So I was covering her bills. She had 2 kids, and I was still covering the bills for my house with James, and we had 2 kids together. When he up and decided to move, I didn't know that he had left all of the bills in arrears. Every one of the bills was late by months. Over the previous few months, the money had been coming in slower, but there was still more than enough to cover the bills and then some. So I have no idea what James was doing with the money. I no longer had the ability to pay for 2 households. So when James moved out, I moved Taylor and her kids in. After they move in, I sit down and I have a talk with Taylor about how to proceed next, because I've never in a million years thought that I would be in a situation with James, especially considering the fact that he himself was a victim. Taylor tells me that she thinks that I need to get a lawyer. At the time, I did not have $5,000 to retain a lawyer. I was sitting there feeling hopeless because I thought within the next couple of days that my sons were going to be spending nights under the same roof as I was sick to my stomach because I felt like I failed by not being in a position to be able to keep them safe. I had to call around to several family members and friends asking to borrow money to start a court case. James calls me and he tells me that he's going to come and pick up the kids in 3 days and that there's nothing that I can do about it. And technically, he's right. On the last day, Taylor's friend came through and she let me borrow $5,000 so that I could get a lawyer and start a court case. I'm incredibly grateful for her because without her, I would not have been able to save my kids. Me and Taylor go into the lawyer's office. We start talking about options, and that's where the lawyer tells me about something called super custody. In the state of Ohio and in many other states, super custody is when an unmarried couple splits. The custody goes to the birth giver of the child. And I asked him what that means. The lawyer went in depth and gave me this analogy. He said, I have as many rights to your kids as you do. I asked him what that means, and he goes on to tell me if James wanted to take the kids out of state, he could do that. But if I wanted to take the kids out of state and he did not want that, he could call the cops and it could technically be kidnapping. My own children. This is a state law. Like, that's actual, like, this is legal. If I didn't have that $5,000 to start the case, my kids would have been sleeping under the same roof as, and that's Ohio law. It's just one of my many concerns about this court system that I will be going over in this entire series. I further asked about my rights. I told the lawyer I was there during every single appointment. I was there during the birth of my children. I signed the birth certificates. What do you mean I don't have rights to my children? He said that I had to file a form with the court to establish that I was their parent, which basically ripped my heart out, because I was like, what was the paper that I signed with that birth certificate stating that I'm their father? That was one of the proudest moments that I had in my entire life. And it felt like they took that away from me, because it completely invalidated any experience that I had. I know that it may not sound serious, that it's just a piece of paper, but that was a very meaningful moment to me. The fact that I was there during every single moment for my children. That was something that I always wanted from my parents, and it wasn't something that I got, but I was able to give to them. And so sitting there in that lawyer's office and having him tell me that I didn't have any rights to my own children broke my heart. Then tells me I need to retain him and I need to file a form establishing parental rights. At that point forward, we can establish an emergency temporary custody order. I want to clarify and identify something in this very, very, very moment. The court case was not against James. The court case was to keep the kids out of Ryan's house. July 2021, we hired the lawyer and filed the paperwork to establish emergency temporary custody and to establish my parental rights. The lawyer told me that it would take a week for the paperwork to be filed and processed. That means legally, I had to allow the kids to go over to James's and Ryan's new house. They had only been over there about once or twice before the lawyer called me and told me that my parental rights had been established and that we could proceed with filing the emergency temporary custody order. I had to act like everything was okay with James this entire time before we filed the emergency custody order, because if he knew, then he could file a countersuit. So my lawyer told me to be quiet. The day we filed the emergency temporary custody order, it's been 1 week since we hired the lawyer. That morning, I got out the shower and I fell to the floor crying. And Taylor came running into the room and she asked me what was wrong. I genuinely felt that in my soul. Starting this case meant that James would think I'm trying to keep the kids away from him because of his relationship. And because of that, he was going to take himself out. I thought that starting this case was going to mean losing my best friend. That is how warped this relationship had my mind. Focus on your kids always. Get up, I get dressed, we go to the courthouse, and we filed an emergency temporary custody order. That weekend, James calls me and he tells me he's about to come pick up the kids. And for the first time, I get to tell him, no, you are not taking the kids over to that house. He reacted as you would expect, and he went and lawyered up. Fast forward a month, and there's pretty much no contact until James calls me and tells me that Ryan has physically. He also tells me that Ryan forces him to do things like shave, which is very significant because James was very, as a trans man, he was very proud of his facial hair. It helped him pass. James then goes on to tell me one very final significant point. He says that Ryan's ex reached out to him on Twitter and documented and detailed the abuse that they went through. They were also a trans man. This is now where Ryan's original arrest record, his original court case, comes into play. In 2011, Ryan got arrested for a 14-year-old girl. He was a youth pastor, and he was texting her illegal pictures, and he was actually on the way up to go see her when her parents found text messages from what this man was sending and sent them to the police, and the police set up a sting to catch him. After finding out all of this information, I am now under the impression that Ryan, your boyfriend, is a dangerous man. Not only does he do this to children, but he does this to adults as well. I get off the phone with James at that night, so worried that I came home and I asked my girlfriend at the time if she would be comfortable with James moving back in temporarily for his safety. Me and Taylor start having a deep discussion because now at this point we're talking about moving my baby daddy back in the house that we now share with our 4 kids. This conversation was tearing apart our house when 2 days later, James calls me and he tells me that him and Ryan worked it out and they're getting back together. Just before we got off the phone, James tells me he sees why I don't want the kids around Ryan and that he wants to drop the case. At this point, I was blindsided and I did not know what to do because you just expressed to me all of the ways in which you should not have kids around somebody. And then 2 days later, you're wanting to put them right back in that same environment. This is just one of the instances that I've had with Ryan. To this day, Ryan continues to have active warrants. Just last year, he crashed into a daycare while drunk driving and then evaded the police on foot, tossed his ID in the process, and then when police finally caught up to him, he claimed to be ill. So they took him into a hospital instead of the jail. There, he claimed to be a John Doe, signed himself out, AMA, and then evaded the police on an open warrant that he already had. This is the type of individual that the court system would have allowed my sons to go to, because the court system as it stands right now is heavily slanted towards women or towards birth givers, as you're going to find out further on in this series. After that first round of August of 2021, James went back to Ryan and told me that he wants to continue the case. Most devastating thing, I had no physical evidence. I did not record that conversation. James used me for emotional support, and once again, I feared for the safety of my children. September 2021, something very interesting happens. I told you to remember that I paid for James's dad's cremation because the pension was supposed to pay for it, but it was going to take up to a year for them to disperse the funds. Well, the check finally came in, but it was in James's name. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the debacle, a stolen EBT card, and blackmail. Buckle up. Kids with part 7. This part of the story is a little bit more difficult for me, so please bear with me throughout this video. Trigger warning, this part of the story contains the child and adult kind and DV situations. Now at the point in the story where James, my baby daddy, has just told me over the phone for an hour-long conversation about this that Ryan has just put him through. Recorded none of this conversation. Keep that in mind because there's a big plot twist that comes up later. August 2021, James goes back to Ryan for the first time and continues the court case. How do you go back into that situation knowing the that you went through and then turn around and say that you deserve to have your kids in that same environment that you just got hurt from? A couple weeks go by and there's pretty much no contact between me and James. He has not even asked to see the kids yet. Just before the end of the month, I got a check in the mail that was addressed to James from the pension that was supposed to pay for his father's cremation. If you remember from the previous videos, the pension said that they would pay for his cremation, but it would take up to a year to release the funds. So I paid for the cremation under the deal that when that check came in, James would give it back to me. Call James to let him know that the check came in. And I want you to remember something very important. I asked James for half instead of the whole thing because, quote, I know you just moved out and you trying to get your stuff together too. I'm trying to get caught up on these bills. So instead of asking for the full thing, send me half. That way you can get yourself together. I can get myself together. He said, okay. And the next day they came to pick up the check. A few days go by and I ask about the money. James tells me that the bank was holding it for a couple days just because they had to make sure the funds were there to clear it, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, cool. As soon as you get it, let me know because I have to catch up on these bills. You left them behind. I got to get caught up on them. For the next week, I'm calling and I don't hear anything until James answers one day and says, hey, I got to swing by and pick up my computer. James gets to the house and I ask him about the money. He tells me, I can give you like $200. That's all I can do. Me, that was a slap in the face. I was the one that paid for your dad's cremation under the guise that you would pay me back. And then when I get the check, I ask for half of it because I'm trying to help you too. And then you tell me you about to give me $200 from it. It was a slap in the face. I told James to keep the money and that I would find another way, including raising the money on social media. He defensively asked, what do you mean? So I told him that I would talk about some of the things that are going on in life and talk about why I needed the money. Going through a court case, yada, yada, yada. James looks at me and he says, if you say something about my boyfriend on social media, it makes me want to say something about you. This was my career. This was my best friend in the entire world, the person who knew the most about me. And then they just sat there in front of my face over money, threatened my career. They didn't even stop to think about the ramifications that would have had on the kids. They did not see the kids. They were not in the kids' lives at that point in time. So had I lost my career, had I lost my source of income, where would the kids have gone? And make matters worse, I was genuinely scared because, again, this is the person that knew the most about me. You know all my dirt, you know all my secrets. And y'all know how cancel culture is. The thing about me now versus the thing about me then. Now, I will snitch on my own self before I let another person blackmail me, which is one of the reasons why I'm sharing all of my dirt with y'all. That was very different from my response back then. I shut down because I didn't know what to do or what to say, and I was fearful of what might happen. They said that they would give me half if I didn't say anything on social media. I agreed. Tell me why. Over the next several weeks, I had dozens of our mutuals contacting me, telling me that I'm trash for blackmailing James out of his dad's death benefit. Again, this is my lifelong best friend. There are a lot of mutuals. Betrayal is an understatement for what I felt. Fast forward to September of 2021. A lot of y'all will remember this moment that I'm about to talk about, the EBT card. That month we had caught up a little bit more on bills, but I was still struggling financially. We had no food in the house. My fridge was bare as hell. I remembered that my son had a PEBT card. It was like the pandemic version of it. And he still had like $200-$300 on it. My plan was to use that card. It had his name on it and everything. And I was going to get food for the house. Remember the last time I saw the EBT card, James had it when he moved out. So I texted him and asked him, can you please text me the PEBT card information so that I can get food in the house? Hours go by and I didn't receive any text back. So I called several times. No answer. About 6 more hours go by when they finally text back. They texted back and told me, my lawyer said that if you have any questions, you need to go through him and we will be ceasing communication from this point forward. Texted back and I was like, I'm not asking for any specific information. I'm asking for the card number that has your son's name on it to get food for your son. After several attempts, I got no response. I did not know what to do. So I made a video asking people for advice on what to do because my mom raised me to always take the high road. After making that video, thank you. After making that video, people collectively sent $1,500 and I was able to get my kids food and even more so, get closer to being caught up fully on the bills. That was one moment y'all did more for me than my baby daddy did for his own kids. I'm giving y'all the whole behind the scenes story because first of all, I want y'all to get to know the full me, not just the me that I've put out on social media over the years. I think that not enough creators fully show what's going on truly in their lives. Back to the story. The video got 2 million views within 2 hours. And within that 2-hour span, James called me back with the quickness, begging me to take the video down. I took the video down because they told me that they were getting threats. And that was not what I wanted. This was still very much somebody this is my kid's other parent. I did not want that. I wanted them safe. I just wanted them to be there for their kids. October 2021. Here's where the story gets crazy. I go outside one day to go clear my mind. And it's been snowing. Snow has always been really peaceful to me. I'm in my backyard. And I look down and I see something sticking out of the snow. My son's iPod that I've been looking for the past 6 months. He's been begging me about it and I could not find it for the life of me. It was in the snow in the backyard. Take it in the house and on a whim, I decided to plug it in. You know what I'm saying? Like, see if it works. Leave it on a charger and I forget about it. A couple days go by and I get a call from James telling me that he has been again physically by Ryan. He told me that he was safe where he was. He used Ryan's card to go to a hotel, so he was physically away from him. But he went on to mention that he texted Ryan's mom about that her son put James through. James said that one night Ryan got drunk and James while he said no. He then goes on to mention one final point, that whenever Ryan would drink, and he would drink every night, he would shit on himself and that James would have to clean it up. He said that he was incredibly happy to be away from the situation. 2 days later, they get back in a relationship with Ryan. I, again, stupidly recorded none of the conversation. This was a person that I trusted. And every step of the way, I thought that they would make the right decision. Heart dropped because I went and immediately told my lawyer about all of this information. And he told me that none of it's usable because I don't have a record of it. Mine was spiraling because I'm getting, at this point, yo-yoed back and forth. I feel like I'm being emotionally manipulated. Go to my room, I plop down on the bed, and right next to me, I just look, and the iPod lights up. I'm baffled that this thing still works because it's been outside for the last 6 months. Take it off the charger, I put in a little code, and a text message comes in. I open a text thread, and I see it's a conversation between James and Ryan's mom. In this text thread, James is detailing the that Ryan has put them through. Remember when I told you how our house dynamic worked? That I would make the money and James would spend the money. That being said, James was the one who spent the money on the iPods. Therefore, James was the one who set up the iPods. He set up the iPod for my son. He used his own iCloud account. So therefore, all of the text messages that were going to his phone were also going to my son's iPod. It was an exact identical clone of his phone. I saw text messages between James and Ryan's ex detailing the back and forth that both of them went through at the hands of this person. And the crazy part is Ryan's first ex was saved under a different name in their phone so that Ryan didn't find out. And the best part of all, I saw text messages between James and his lawyer. So this whole time, I had a sneak peek at what was going on in James's phone. I had access to every single picture, every text, all of that. I ran to my lawyer to ask him, one, was this even legal? And two, is any of this admissible? He said, one, yes, this is legal. Two, keep every single piece of evidence that you have in that device. A lawyer said that everything in that device was admissible in court because James was the one who set up the device. Want to know one of the most interesting things about the American court system, though? You would think with all of that information that this case would have been a cakewalk after that. The lawyer told me that all of this evidence in and of itself may still not be enough to win the case outright because the court heavily favors women and or birth givers. Make sure you check back for the next parts. We're going to be talking about visitation, the escape from rehab, and the trial.
Ciao. This is exhausting. This is exhausting. Please go down in the comment section and share your thoughts, but please keep it respectful as always. I'm going to post the part 3 in a couple of hours now, so you want to watch, you want to subscribe to the channel, so you don't want to miss out, so do that. But I just feel like for me, he's saying that James, who is baby daddy, baby mama, however it is, was blackmailing him about putting things out there on social media. What are those things? Because I feel like for her to threaten me, she has debt on him, and what are those debts that he was so scared for her to talk about? Was it that he was abusive? What was those things? Because he's sharing this whole story. He's not really talking about so much about what he did. Not that I'm trying to victim blame. Oh no, the man must have done something. No, this is his own story. And I'm just wondering if James/Jessica has our own part of the story, which I'm going to look for now because this story is very interesting and it's coming just from one side. But yeah, I really like when people share their story. Okay, so I'm not trying to bring them down or anything. I like when people share their story, and I feel like people learn one or two things out of the story and all that, especially when it comes to legal issues like this. Like I'm even learning more about the American system and even different states and how the law works and all that. And him talking about how the system, the court system favors women or birth mothers, I just find that very interesting because really? Anyway, guys, let me know your thought down in the comment section. I'd love to know what you think about this conversation down in the comment section, but please keep it respectful. And I will see you guys in the part 3. Part 3 is the final part, so you want to watch it, okay? So with that all said, guys, I will see you guys in my next video. Deuces.